Most people who say they function fine on 6 hours of sleep are not wrong. They're describing how it feels. The problem is that sleep loss changes perception before it causes obvious collapse. The first thing it takes is the ability to accurately notice what it is taking. In controlled sleep restriction studies, participants limited to 6 hours per night for multiple consecutive nights report that they stabilize. They feel as though they have adapted. Objectively, their reaction times are slower and their attention lapses increase, and cognitive errors accumulate across days. Performance continues to decline while sleep assessment plateaus. The system that evaluates the system is impaired by the same process that is degrading it. After roughly 17 to 19 hours awake, measurable cognitive impairment begins to resemble alcohol intoxication in terms of reaction time and attention variability. That comparison reflects laboratory data, yet culturally, one of those states is condemned and the other is often framed as discipline. The illusion is not that we feel exhausted. The illusion is that we feel functional. Sleep is usually described as recovery, which makes it sound passive and negotiable. A more accurate description is recalibration. During sleep, the brain is not shutting down, it is reorganizing. Sleep unfolds in cycles of roughly 90 minutes, and within those cycles, non-rapid eye movement stages deepen into slow-wave sleep, and later cycles contain increasing proportions of REM sleep. A typical night includes 4 to 6 of these cycles when allowed to complete. Slow-wave sleep, which tends to dominate the early part of the night, is associated with growth hormone release, immune modulation, metabolic regulation, and synchronized neural activity. During this stage, the glymphatic system increases clearance of metabolic byproducts such as beta amyloid. Synaptic downscaling occurs, meaning neural connections that were potentiated during the day are selectively pruned and recalibrated. The brain reduces noise and it restores signal. REM sleep, which becomes more prominent in the later part of the night, is associated with emotional memory processing, associative integration, and recalibration of threat response. Connectivity between the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex shifts, and emotional intensity can soften while memory content remains. The brain preserves information but updates its emotional charge. Complete sleep is not simply unconsciousness, it is the completion of multiple cycles with adequate representation of both deep sleep and REM. When an alarm truncates the final 90 minutes, it often cuts into a REM-rich cycle. When sleep is fragmented by light exposure, alcohol, irregular timing, or stress physiology, architecture becomes shallow. You may be in the bed for 7 hours and still fail to complete the pattern your brain expects. There is a small subset of individuals who truly require less sleep. Certain genetic variants, including mutations affecting the DEC2 gene, are associated with naturally short sleep duration without measurable cognitive or metabolic impairment. These individuals are rare, and objective testing supports their stability across domains. Most people, however, who believe that they are short sleepers have not undergone controlled testing. What often feels like resilience is adaptation to narrower cognitive bandwidth. The difference is not how it feels on day one. The difference is what objective performance and long-term physiology reveal over time. So what does complete sleep feel like mentally? Well, it doesn't feel euphoric. It feels proportionate. Thoughts arrive in order rather than in collision. Minor inconveniences register as minor. The space between stimulus and response widens slightly. Appetite signals align more closely with energy needs, and decision-making feels less rushed. Memory retrieval is smoother, and the internal narrative quiets without disappearing. There's just more room inside the mind. When sleep is incomplete, the changes are subtle at first. Functional imaging studies show heightened amygdala responses to negative stimuli after sleep deprivation, along with reduced regulatory input from the prefrontal cortex. Interpretation narrows, ambiguity skews negative, frustration tolerance declines, and risk assessment becomes less stable. Impulsivity increases and cognitive flexibility decreases. Sleep loss does not only slow you down, it alters what feels significant. A comment that would normally pass without notice feels sharper. A small logistical problem feels more complex. Long-term planning feels heavier. You may not identify this as sleep debt. You may identify it as stress, personality, or circumstance, but chronic partial sleep restriction also shifts physiology in ways that feed back into perception. Cortisol rhythms destabilize. Insulin sensitivity declines measurably after even a few nights of short sleep. Ghrelin rises while leptin falls, altering appetite regulation. Inflammatory markers increase. Testosterone can decline with sustained restriction. These shifts influence mood, energy, and motivation, which in turn influence behavior, which then shapes the next night's sleep. So the loop just continues to tighten. Sleep becomes an upstream regulator of interpretation. So the question becomes, how do people drift into incomplete sleep without intending to? Well, light is one of the mechanisms. The human circadian system interprets darkness as a signal for melatonin release. Evening exposure to bright, blue-enriched light from screens and overhead light suppresses melatonin and shifts circadian timing later. The body expects contrast between day and night, and modern life often reduces that contrast. Irregular timing is another. When bedtime and wake time shift substantially between weekdays and weekends, circadian rhythms destabilize. Catching up on sleep can create a form of social jet lag that makes subsequent nights shallower and more fragmented. Architecture erodes not because of a single catastrophic night, but because predictability fades. Alcohol is commonly misunderstood. It can reduce sleep latency, which feels helpful, but it fragments REM and increases awakenings in the second half of the night. Sedation is not equivalent to complete cycling. Many people fall asleep faster and sleep worse. Late stimulation matters as well. Intense cognitive work, emotionally activating media, heavy meals, or vigorous exercise close to bedtime elevate sympathetic tone. Sleep requires physiological downshifting. If the nervous system is still accelerating when you enter bed, onset may be delayed and depth reduced. Chronic stress compounds that problem. Elevated evening cortisol, rumination, and hypervigilance keep the brain in a lighter, more fragmented pattern. The mind remains partially on guard, and cycles may initiate but fail to consolidate. And alarms deserve more attention than they often receive. If bedtime is late and wake time fixed, the last REM-rich cycle is consistently sacrificed. Many individuals repeatedly truncate the portion of sleep most associated with emotional integration and cognitive flexibility, then normalize the resulting volatility. The result is rarely dramatic collapse. It is a gradual recalibration downward. Bandwidth narrows, irritability normalizes, and decision fatigue feels like workload rather than architecture. What restores complete sleep is alignment. Consistent sleep and wake times anchor circadian rhythm. Regularity strengthens amplitude in the sleep-wake cycle and improves the probability that full cycles will express predictability. Morning light exposure, particularly within the first hour of waking, entrains the circadian clock. Natural light provides a stronger cue than indoor lighting, even on cloudy days. That cue improves melatonin timing later in the evening. Evening darkness supports downshifting. Dimming lights 1 to 2 hours before bed, reducing screen intensity, and avoiding highly stimulating content all lower sympathetic tone and permit melatonin to rise. Protecting your final 90 minutes of sleep can be more powerful than extending sleep indefinitely. If wake time is fixed, moving bedtime earlier preserves REM-rich cycles more reliably than weekend recovery. Limiting alcohol within several hours of bedtime reduces REM fragmentation, and awareness of its architectural effects allows for deliberate choice rather than assumption. Wind-down routines need not be elaborate. They should reduce cognitive load and emotional activation. Lower stimulation signals transition. The sleep environment matters because architecture is sensitive to disruption. A cool, dark, quiet room reduces micro-awakenings that fragment cycles. These adjustments are structural supports rather than performance enhancements. Improving sleep is not about intensity. It is about restoring conditions under which the brain can complete the pattern it evolved to complete. When the pattern is restored, the first changes are often mental rather than physical. Irritation softens, decisions stabilize, energy distributes more evenly across the day, appetite aligns more predictably, and interpretation widens. Problems return to proportion, and most people do not need more discipline. They need more complete cycles. If you frequently feel functional but brittle, productive but short-tempered, capable but cognitively crowded, sleep architecture is a reasonable place to look before assuming personality or circumstance is the primary driver. Sleep does not simply repair tissue, it recalibrates perception. When recalibration is incomplete, you may still move throughout the day, but you do so with narrowed bandwidth and altered judgment. And because the evaluation system itself is affected, the impairment feels normal. The illusion of functioning well on less sleep is not about toughness. It's about adaptation to subtle decline. Restoring complete cycles is less dramatic than many performance strategies, but it is more foundational. The mind and body are recalibrating an integrated system. This is uncommonly remarkable. Thanks for listening.